Anyway, okay, so, I mean, that's what I'm here for. Judge, jury, and executioner. Alright, okay, so I'm gonna get straight into it. Just straight up balls deep into it, okay? Because I am like so stupid excited to read this on stream. Oh, that says stream ending. I'm dumb. Well, there it says stream beginning. Now it doesn't say stream anything. Alright. Ha. The Confederacy made its last stand in Brazil. After the Civil War, more than 10,000 Southerners left the U.S. rather than submit to the Yankee rule. Now, 10,000 Americans in 1860 is like a decent chunk of the population, if we want to be honest. Because if we also go over here, how many people died in the Civil War? Okay, so like that is a literal percentage of the total numbers of deaths in the Civil War. So that's a decent amount of Americans running to Brazil. I find it hilarious that not only did these Confederates run to Brazil, but less than 100 years later, there's Colonia Dignidad, which is a Nazi village in Chile, and there's also a bunch of Nazi villages in Brazil and Argentina. What is it about South America? It's okay. What is it about South America that is drawing the white people down there who want to hide? It's interesting. Or at least it's interesting to me. Either way, by the time the Civil War ended in 1986, in 1865, much of the South lay in ruins, physically and economically and socially. Years of Yankee reprisals and racial conflict percolated through society. Enslaved peoples had been freed. Confederate President Jonathan Davis, goddammit, was imprisoned. For William H. Norris, a former Alabama state senator and staunch Confederate, it was all too much to bear. Rather than rejoin the United States, he had a son travel to southeastern Brazil in late 1865 and purchased about 500 acres. 500 acres is fucking big. Of rolling hills and reddish soil that reminded them of Alabama. Well, I know what that means. Uh, they then bought three enslaved workers, only three, just three dudes. Three enslaved workers planted cotton and sent for the rest of the family and proceeded to live as if the Confederacy hadn't just collapsed. The Norris family was not alone in their desire to avoid Yankee rule. In the decade after the Civil War, roughly 10,000 Southerners left the United States, with the majority going to Brazil, where slavery was still legal. I didn't even know that. When did slavery become illegal in Brazil? Oh, Robbie, where are you? We were talking about slavery. What are you doing? You're supposed to be here. Ah, I literally mentioned you, you bastard. But yes, me and him were just talking about slavery and when it ended. Others went to such places as Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, Honduras, Canada, and Egypt. What Southerners went to Canada? That doesn't even make sense. And Southerners going to Egypt? That's even a bigger question. Through hardships prompted most to come right back, descendants of the so called Confederados, they were called Confederados, maintain a presence in Brazil even today. We are no longer comrades, we're Confederados. Amid the post Civil War chaos, several countries tried to entice Southerners, largely for political and agricultural reasons. In Mexico, for example, Emperor Maximilian I, soon to be executed before a firing squad, awarded land and tax breaks and hired Confederate oceanographer, he's an oceanographer, Matthew Fontaine Murray to be his imperial commissioner of immigration. In Venezuela, the authorities also provided land and tax breaks. In Egypt, an Ottoman viceroy brought over ex-Confederate and ex-Union officers to help invade Ethiopia. Really? All right, that one's tomorrow. The invasion of Ethiopia from Egypt using Confederate soldiers. The best incentives, however, came from Brazilian Emperor Dom Pedro II, a Confederate ally who had sheltered and supplied Southern ships during the Civil War. Why the fuck wasn't I taught any of this in school? He offered land to the Confederados for as little as 22 cents an acre. 500 acres at 22 cents. That wasn't right. I can't remember how to do math. Let's try that again. Never mind. We're not going to do that again. I don't know how to use calculators. Ignore me. Am big dumb. He offered the land to the Confederados for as little as 22 cents an acre, subsidizing their transport to Brazil, provided a temporary lodging upon arrival, promised them quick citizenship, and at times... Oh my god, yeah, no, so you already missed the beginning of it, where we found out that Brazil sheltered and supplied Southern ships during the Civil War, that Egypt took in a bunch of ex-Confederate and ex-Union officers to invade Ethiopia. There's a lot of weird shit in this article. It's fucking great. He offered land to the Confederados for as little as 22 cents an acre. This is for 500 acres. Subsidized their transport to Brazil, provided temporary lodging upon arrival, promised them quick citizenship, and at times even personally greeted them as they disembarked. Much of the Southern media opposed the exodus, as did Robert E. Lee, who believed all efforts should go toward rebuilding the South. But Dom Pedro counterattacked by taking out advertisement in U.S. newspapers. Meanwhile, certain pro-colonization Southerners produced glowing reports that portrayed Brazil as a tropical paradise. Of course, when they got here, it was nothing like what they imagined, said Cyrus B. Sonny, Dwalsey, a professor emeritus at Auburn University who co-authored and edited the book The Confederados, Old South Immigrants in Brazil. Dom Pedro seemingly had two main motives for luring in Confederados, the first of which was agricultural. He saw these people as bringing new technologies and new abilities in farming to Brazil, in which in fact they did. Dwalsey says, pointing out that they introduced watermelons and pecans to the new country along with state-of-the-art plows. Holy shit. Okay, so I bet anything that the giant farm plantations that grow watermelons and pecans in Brazil still, that are all sold to Chiquita, are probably still owned by these Confederate people. Furthermore, it was public policy to Brazil to whiten society by bringing in Europeans and European-descended Americans, says Lucia de Cruz Brito, history professor at the Federal University of Rocanavo. Okay, let's try it again. Roconconvo. Okay, I can't pronounce that. De Bahia, who studied slavery and abolition. I am not. Okay, you know what? We gon' Google how to pronounce that, because I feel really fucking dumb for not being able to pronounce that. Pronounce it! Say's the word! Really? Really?
Bahia.
Bahia, okay. Okay, how about the fucking first one?
Reconcavo.
Reconcavo de Bahia. Okay, so I wasn't absolutely super far off. Not horrible. Still not great. Okay. Yeah. I mean, dude. I can't speak English. There's no queen here. That bitch can at least speak English. Furthermore, specific probably to whiten them up who studied slavery and abolition. At this time, slavery remained illegal in Brazil, which over the course of its history imported more than 10 times as many enslaved people as the United States. Oh, remained legal in Brazil. In fact, it did not ban the practice until 1888, becoming the last country in the Western Hemisphere to ban slavery. In 1965, Brazil barely even had an abolitionist movement, Brito says. Her research shows that some southern immigrants to Brazil took enslaved African Americans with them in disregard of U.S. and Brazilian law. Others bought new enslaved people upon arrival, such as former Alabama State Representative Charles G. Gunter, whose family letters tell of his acquisition of 38 enslaved workers in Brazil. This letter also mentions another Confederado who acquired a sugar plantation with 130 enslaved workers. I mean, I know she said Reconcavo. I'm like, Reconcavo. Let's do a little Reconcavo. Sounds like Peggy Hill. Descendants of the original Confederados tend to play down their ancestors tied to slavery, yet according to Brito, the Confederados were largely attracted to Brazil both because they wanted to own enslaved people and because they believed the institution of slavery would maintain strict racial hierarchies. Based on the documentation that I read, Brito says, I have no doubt that they came to Brazil because of slavery. Slave auction in Brazil. Jesus Christ, man. They depicted people so badly. Still, these American expatriates never came close to replicating the large slaveholding estates of the Deep South. These folks that moved to Brazil were not the wealthy plantation owner, Dossie says. They were middle-income farmers. Some were doctors, some were school teachers, some were machinists. So again, when I was talking about how poor people in the South literally looked up to slave owners as the thing to become, I meant that. They literally ran to Brazil to become that. He adds that many belonged to families that had traditionally been pioneers on the frontier and that in his view they weren't die-hard slaveholders. Whatever their reasons for immigrating, the Confederados struggled to adapt to their new homes, and many of the Brazilian settlements, the climate and soil were so ill-suited to the types of crops they wanted to grow, such as cotton. Disease, insect infestations, and internal power struggles likewise took a toll, as did a lack of transportation infrastructure that made it difficult for them to get their crops to market. Political support also dried up as Dom Pedro became distracted by an economic downturn, his country's participation in the gruesome war of the Triple Alliance, and his own worsening health. At the same time, language and religious barriers... Oh, shut up. The language and religious barriers, the overwhelmingly Protestant Confederados weren't even allowed to bury their dead in the local Catholic cemeteries, contributed to a sense of isolation. Dossie says, you read the letters and they were just homesick, not just for their family members, but also for the way of life, things like church and food. Oh, whine about the church. What's more, Brazil's racial norms proved perplexing, particularly the more relaxed attitudes towards interracial marriage, the integrated army and police force, and the social mobility permitted to free blacks. Alright, wait, so they still had slavery, but they also let them have a whole bunch of rights? That's fucking confusing. Brito points out a lot of people who were considered white in Brazil were considered mulatto by the Confederates. I mean, yeah, they were mixed. All but one of the half dozen or so Confederados settlements in Brazil, which ranged from the Amazon in the north to Paraná state in the south, disintegrated within a few years. So did those in other Latin American countries. The lone exception was the William H. Norris colony, located in the agricultural interior of Sao Paulo state. Wow, it's in Sao Paulo. It continued attracting immigrants from the south and other failed Brazilian settlements and wanted to grow to encompass the town of Americana, so named in the Confederados' honor. At its peak in the late 1800s, Americana and its surroundings were home to as many as 3,500 Confederados. Wow, so they dropped by like 6,500. Although the community started out being quite insular, with its members marrying and worshiping amongst themselves, the Brazilian-born generations were much more likely to leave for Brazil's cities or otherwise assimilate. There were also a small wave of immigration back to the South, now strictly segregated again under Jim Crow laws. Around the same time slavery was banned in Brazil, the Confederados even led a lynch mob that murdered an abolitionist police chief near Americana in 1888. For the most part, though, the Confederados coexisted peacefully with their neighbors. Something of their spirit passed into local life. Sociologist Jose Altarrios wrote of the Confederados in 1947. They enriched our society with their progressive mind. What the fuck did I just read? They enriched our society with their progressive mind, their capacity for action, and their technical competence. And perhaps in the hearts of their Sao Paulo descendants has filtered a little bit of that love of freedom and American tradition and the pride of the old planter that is the Southern tradition. Oh my God, shut up. Stop trying to make it sound nice. What? Oh my God. What? You like tried to give him credit. Oh, progressivism meant something different in the 19th century. Oh, fucking clearly it did. Oh, that last fucking just sentence hurt. Just all this. That just hurt. Alright, now if no one knows what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the Nazis being in Chile and Argentina and shit like that, this is the Colonia Dignidad. How do I make you bigger? I never remember how to make the page bigger. Whatever. Colonia Dignidad, Dignity Colony, was an isolated colony of Germans and Chileans established in the post-World War II Chile by emigrant Nazi Germans, which had become notorious for the instrument torture and murder of dissidents during the military dictatorship of General Augusto Pinochet in the 1970s, while under the leadership of German fugitive Paul Schaffer. Schaffer was a follower and promoter of the teachings of William Branham. The main legal economic activity of the colony was agriculture, as always. At various periods, it was also home to a school, hospital, 2 airstrips, a restaurant, and a power station. Said restaurant is still there. Largest continuous leader, Paul Schaffer, arrived in the colony in 1961. Schaffer was a fugitive accused of child molestation in West Germany. Didn't know that part. The colonization he led in Chile was described alternatively as a cult or a group of harmless eccentrics. The organization was secretive, and the colonia was surrounded by barbed wire fences and featured a watchtower searchlight, and was later reported to the Commission for Truth and Reconciliation. And was later reported to contain secret weapons and caches. External investigations, including efforts by the Chilean government, uncovered a history of criminal activity in the enclave, including child sexual abuse. Of course it did. I'm sorry. I'm probably going to end up doing a deep dive into a bunch of sexual abuse stuff just because for some reason I have so much knowledge on it. Reports from Chile's National Commission for Truth and Reconciliation indicate that a small set of many individuals abducted by Pinochet's Dirección de Inteligencia Nacional during his rule were held as prisoners at Colonia Dignidad, some of whom were subject to torture, and that some of the Colonia residents at the time were participants in the atrocities. In 1991, the family of the settlement was changed to Villa Barbarita. Why am I putting an extra L in Bavrita? Bavria. Fuck. Let's try that again. Residents of the colony are now free to leave, and the site is open for tourism. Oh, they're now free to leave. Sure they are. There's not a whole bunch of weird shit happening in that town. Located in a remote area of the Mal region of central Chile, Colonia Dignidad was 35 kilometers southwest of the city of Parral, the north bank of the not going to try that river. The full name of the colony in the 1950s was Sociedad Benefactora e Educacional Dignidad, Charitable and Educational Society Dignity. Okay, what? That doesn't even make sense. At its largest, Colonia Dignidad was home to some 300 German and Chilean residents and covered 137 square kilometers. Okay, so at its height in the 1950s, it had only like 300 people, as opposed to the Confederates, who made a fucking society of 10,000 people. 10,000. The first inhabitants of Colonia Dignidad arrived in 1961, brought by German. That's a while after the First or the Second War. That's a while. Paul Schaefer, who was born in 1921 in the town of Treidesdorf. Schaefer's first employment in Germany was as welfare worker for children in an institution at the local church, a post from which he was fired at the end of the 1940s. He then faced accusations of sexual abuse against children in his care. Whilst these first reports led to his dismissal, no criminal proceedings were initiated. Schaefer became one of the followers of William Branham, who campaigned in Europe during the 1950s. Schaefer traveled to the United States to be in Branham's meetings and was influenced to move to Chile by Branham's doomsday prophecies that predicted the imminent destruction of the United States. Schaefer, what is this that we're talking about? Okay, let's look up William Branham for a fucking moment, because I don't know who this is. Okay, William Marion Branham, 1909 to 1965, was an American Christian minister and faith healer who initiated the post-World War II healing revival. He left a lasting impact on televangelism and the modern charismatic movement, and good boy. I love bananas. Since we're talking about banana republics. Of course, he was born in Burkesville, Kentucky. Fuck. Burial place, Jeffersonville, Indiana? No shit. Indiana is a hellhole. They would bury some fucking weird ass. Oh, the banana. That is my OnlyFans notification letting me know that I just got a new OnlyFan. So when you hear me say I love bananas, I love bananas. He left a lasting impact on televangelism and the modern charismatic movement, and is recognized as the principal architect of restoration thought for charismatics by some Christian historians. Okay, so the charismatic movement, I know a whole lot about that, and that is a very fucked up thing when it comes to, oh yes, it's a great source of potassium and calcium. At the time they were held, his interdenominational, not interdimensional. Oh fuck, I thought this man was cooler than I was. His interdenominational meetings were the largest religious meetings ever held in some American cities. Branham was the first American deliverance minister to successfully campaign in Europe. His ministry reached global audiences with major campaigns held in North America, Europe, Africa, and India. Holy shit. Branham claimed that he had received an angelic visitation on May 7th, 1946, commissioning his worldwide ministry and launching his campaigning career in mid-1946. His fame rapidly spread as crowds were drawn to his stories of angelic visitation and reports of miracles happening at his meetings. His ministry spawned many emulators and set the broader healing revival that later became known as the modern charismatic movement in motion. At the peak of his popularity in the 1950s, Branham was widely adored, and the neo-Pentecostal world believed Branham to be the prophet to their generation. From 1955, Branham's campaigning and popularity began to decline as the Pentecostal churches began to withdraw their support from the healing campaigns for primarily financial reasons. By 1960, Branham transitioned into a teaching ministry. Unlike his contemporaries who followed doctrinal teachings which are known as the full gospel tradition, Branham developed an alternate theology which was primarily a mixture of Calvinism and Arminian doctrines? Arminian doctrines. I don't know what that is. And had a heavy focus on despotialism. Wow, I'm having a problem with words all of a sudden. And Branham's own unique eschatological views. Ooh. Hey chat, just give me a list of big words and I'll try to read them. I'm sure that should be amusing. Branham developed an alternative theology which was primarily... Oh, I just said that. Don't read it again. While widely accepting the restoration doctrine he imposed during the healing revival, his divergent post-revival teachings were deemed increasingly controversial by his charismatic and Pentecostal contemporaries, who subsequently disavowed many of the doctrines as revolutionary madness. His racial teachings on serpent seed and his connection of a membership of a Christian denomination to the mark of the beast alienated many of his former supporters. His closest supporters, however, accepted his sermons as oral scripture and referred to his teachings as the message. I can read antihistamines. I know how to read antihistamines, sir. I have allergies. I can say antihistamines all day. I will over and over again just say bananas. I love the way I say bananas. It's very fun. Eschatological. Oh, what's that mean? What's eschatological mean? What? Este louder logical. I bastardized that beautifully. His closest follower, the message. In 1963, Branham preached a sermon in which he indicated he was the prophet with the anointing of Elijah, who had come to herald Christ's second coming. Despite Branham's objections, some followers of his teachings placed him at the center of a cult of personality during his final years. Branham claimed that he had converted over 1 million people during his career. His teachings continued to be promoted by the William Branham Evangelical Association, which reported that almost 2 million people received its material in 2018. Jesus Christ. Anti-despotism. Oh, how did we get onto this guy? Because this was the guy that convinced the Nazi guy to move to Chile. And I was wondering how that even happened. Yep, and it only says right here at the very bottom, followers of Branham's teaching in the Colonia Dignidad were portrayed in the 2015 film in Colonia, which is just very lightly touching on what we just read in the Colonia Dignidad. I am seriously going to try that. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Shit, that was really close. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Tarianism. Destitute. Sir, that just means poor. I know it doesn't. It means poor now. Throughout his healing revivals, Branham was accused of committing fraud by news reporters, fellow ministers, host churches, and governmental agencies when people who he had claimed had been healed died shortly thereafter. The governments of South Africa and Norway intervened in order to stop his healing campaigns in their countries. In the United States, Branham was charged with tax evasion for failing to account for the donations received through his ministry. Admitting his liability, he settled the case out of court. After his death, the news media's report that Branham had ties to the Ku Klux Klan and Jim Jones. He had ties to Jim Jones? What was his tie to Jim Jones? Chat. About to go on another rabbit hole from this guy to Jim Jones, because how is he connected to Jim Jones and the fucking compound in Africa? What is going on? What is this dude? Who is this man? Branham helped the church launch Jones's ministry by holding campaigns with him in 1956 and 57. Paul Schaefer and the other followers of William Branham's teachings have regularly been mentioned in the news due to the serious crimes they committed. Followers of Branham's teaching in the Colonia Dignidad film Colonia, the connections led to news reports which labeled Branham's followers a doomsday cult. Yeah, what the fuck was this dude preaching? I ain't reading all this, don't worry. Healing revival background, known for his role in healing revivals that occurred in the United States in the 1940s and 50s. Most participants of the movements regarded him as an initiator. Christian writer John Crowder described the period of his revivals as the most extensive public display of miraculous power in modern history. Some, like the Christian author, counter-cult activist Hank Hangenoff, rejected the entire healing revival as a hoax and condemned the movement as a cult in his 1997 book, Counterfeit Revival. The early campaigns. I'm curious about the Jim Jones thing. It's okay. It started off with the Confederacy and moved to Nazis, and now we're on Jim Jones cults, doomsday cults. Yeah, I know. Okay, how did I don't know. Okay, like I said, we got to this guy from the Nazis in Chile, which we got to from the Confederates. I am the worst for doing this. We literally just went from the Confederates to doomsday cults. And I guarantee I can get back to Pamela Anderson's tits somehow. Don't worry. No one understood that joke just now. Why did I do that? Why do I tell jokes that only I get? Followers of Branham's teaching can be found around the world. Branham claimed to have made over 1 million converts during his campaign meetings. His followers range widely in belief and practice. Some groups practice polygamy. What? Some followers have been known to drink poison and handle snakes. Snake handlers. The followers have attempted to reform Branham's most extreme teachings. While most churches adhere to a common set of tenets, the extreme local authority of the church promoted by Branham has led to widespread differences in interpretations of Branham's prophetic teachings. In 1986, there was an estimated 300,000 followers. In 2000, William Branham Evangelical Association had missions on every inhabited continent, with 1,600 estimated churches in Latin America and growing missions across Africa. This dude is probably related to some of the worst crimes that were committed by the church that don't have to directly do with the Catholic Church. In 2018, the Voice of God recordings claimed to serve Branham's related support material to about 2 million people through the Evangelical Association. Many different followers of Branham's teachings have claimed to be his immediate successor, or in Elisha to his Elijah. Many have also believed that Branham's son Joseph has claimed to be the inheritance of his father's ministry. Each of the men claiming to be his successor have established new sects of Branham's followers. One common thing amongst all the groups is the belief that Branham was the return of Elijah the prophet, and receiving his prophetic revelations is necessary to escape the impending destruction of the world. So they are literally a giant doomsday cult with a whole bunch of fingers in everyone's little pie. Branham's followers do not have a central unifying leadership. That's what you literally just said. But Branham's son Joseph and Billy Paul, I bet his name's Billy Paul, led the William Branham Evangelical Association and hold influence over many churches. Peary Green, 1933 to 2015, in Arizona, and Ewald Frank in Germany both held influence over a significant number of churches. Tensions over Branham's identity are the primary causes of divisions between the groups. Followers of Branham's son expect the resurrection of Branham to fulfill unfinished prophecies. Followers of the Green and Frank believe Branham's prophecies will have a spiritual fulfillment and not require his return. Still, other groups believe Branham was the return of Christ. Wait, I thought he was Elijah! Followers are often in the news. Paul Schaefer, a follower and promoter of William Branham's teachings, based in Chile, he wasn't based in Chile, he was based in Germany, and then was convinced to move to Chile by this guy, which is at least what the other article says. Was discovered to have been running a compound where he was sexually molesting and torturing children in 2006. Schaefer was later arrested, convicted, and died in prison. Accomplices of the crimes were charged and awaited trial, fled Chile, and took refuge in the church of Ewald Frank, who was also a regular visitor of the Colonia Dignidad, where they were protected from extradition to face trial. Schaefer and his compound were portrayed in the 2015 film Colonia. In 1924, Pastor Donnie Reagan made news in the United States for promoting racial teachings. Several news outlets labeled Reagan as the most racist pastor in America in 2017. Oh, that's cute. Street preachers promoting Branham in Canada began to make national news for their aggressive behavior. Oh God, I gotta Google that. I gotta YouTube that. Their tactics promoted officials to pass legislation targeting their activities. In 2019, they were arrested multiple times for harassing women for their appearance and disrupting church services. The CBC investigated Branham and focused their reports on his connections to Jim Jones and the Ku Klux Klan, labeled Branham's followers a doomsday cult. In 2020, a minister who promoted Branham teaching in Trinidad was arrested, charged, and convicted for money laundering through his church. God, the church is dirty. Pastor Theodore Magalu, the leader of Branham's followers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, encouraged his followers to violence against Catholics in his country. News reports claim that Mugala's followers forced 145 priests and nuns to strip naked, cover their heads, and film their whippings. Jesus. In 2020, Joaquim Gonzalez, Gonzalez, I don't know how to pronounce the C with the little tilde underneath it. Silva, a prominent leader of Branham's followers in Brazil, was accused of raping multiple women. Silva died while waiting for his trial for the trial of his alleged crimes. In 2021, the Freedom of Mind Institute published an article labeling Branham's followers a cult, stating, Branham's ministry was characterized by white supremacy and deeply misogynized attitudes. In 2020, the Russian government labeled missionaries of Branham's teachings as extremists and banned the importation of Branham-related publications to the Russian Federation. Are they called the Russian Federation right now? People who try to leave the teachings of Branham often face extreme repercussion. Carl Dick wrote, Carl Dick. Those who have come out... okay, let's not hit the pitch of a young boy in the middle of puberty. Those who have come out of this group give solemn evidence of the devastating effect that Branham had on them, both emotionally and psychologically. In fact, the followers of Branham pray that evil will come upon people who leave their church so they will come back. Branham's followers are known to harass critics and individuals who reject Branham's teachings. Dick also reported that people who published material critical of Branham's teaching have been threatened by his followers and warned that they may be killed. Oh my god, there's so many notes on this dude. Holy shit. Oh, okay, I'm doing a deep dive on this motherfucker at some point. This dude is connected to so much dirty shit. Oh, I love this. I love that. I love that for me. Alright. Let's get to the game. That was 43 minutes of me just going onto a Wikipedia deep dive that started with Confederacy, moved to Nazis, and now we're in Doomsday Cults. Awesome. Thank you for the 3 people that showed up today. I know it's Friday and everyone probably has something better to do than watch my stupid ass. But either way, for my closer, make sure to check out all of my links. Make sure to check out my Twitch. Make sure to check out my YouTube. I am uploading edited videos of the recordings that I actually do here, and I'm adding a lot more into them, and sometimes I'm taking stuff out of it for time. Besides that, make sure to please go follow my Twitter over there. That's where I add updates to when I'm streaming, what I'm streaming, polls and stuff like that. Please make sure to check out my Instagram, and most of all, please make sure to check out my Onlyfans and my Etsy. Drop a coin in your young witch's purse because she's a poor. And closer, have a good night.